I'm Jake.
And I'm Christine.
And as many know, the movie Blade Runner takes place in November, no specific day is listed, of 2019. And we're in November 2019, and it's safe to say that movie was way off in its portrayal of the future. There are no flying cars, there are no artificial human sex robots walking about, but it's still a classic film. And before the month is over, I thought we'd look at a video about Blade Runner. I was originally going to go for the honest trailer for Blade Runner, which is really good, but that really only works if you've seen Blade Runner, and it has a lot of spoilers. So I thought we'd take a look at one that, while showing a few plot points, does not give away the whole movie or what it's about.
Okay.
Sound good to you?
Sounds good.
This is actually someone we've never reacted to before, and he doesn't appear on camera, it's voice only, but this is the first video we've reacted to from Chris Stuckmann. Chris Stuckmann is a really successful YouTuber. I can't remember how many subscribers he has right now, I'll put it down here, but he reached over 1 million about a year or two ago. Really well-spoken guy, articulates himself extremely well, and he's short, sweet, and to the point pretty much. So, without further ado, let's jump into it.
How many times do you normally have to watch a film before you decide if you like it or not? I'd say for most, you know instantly upon first viewing. Nowadays, the vast majority of mainstream films are specifically designed to appeal to mass audiences, and most of them are vigorously tested before release to ensure they'll please the target demographic. To experience mainstream cinema that takes risks, our only sure bet, it seems, is the trusted auteur filmmakers that Hollywood has excused from its soul-crushing machine. The Spielbergs, the Scorseses, and Tarantinos that have time and time again proven themselves. In 1982, Ridley Scott apparently did not yet occupy that prestigious group of filmmakers, as the theatrical cut of Blade Runner was tampered with after disastrous test screenings. An ending narration that Harrison Ford famously hated was inserted, as well as unused footage from The Shining, a clear attempt to explain the film to audiences. Scott wasn't against the narration idea, but wanted something more along the lines of classic film noir, something philosophical. It's that original cut of Blade Runner I was first exposed to as a teen, and I remember being very conflicted by it. In fact, I'd go as far as saying I didn't like it. Eventually, I saw the director's cut and still had issues with the movie. With the release of the definitive final cut, I sat down to watch Blade Runner expecting to finally get it. But still, problems arose for me. I didn't like the Sebastian character. I thought he ruined the pacing. I didn't care for the romance that blossoms between Deckard and Rachel. I felt the film didn't have enough action, and I found the whole experience disappointingly hollow. 2 years went by, and I had decided that was it. I simply didn't get Blade Runner. But with 2049 coming out, I found myself itching to watch it again. This is something that has never happened to me. Why am I constantly drawn to a film that I don't love? Why the incessant need to watch it every few years? Was I missing something? I have no problem admitting that I absolutely was. I bought the new 4K Blu-ray, which is the best 4K transfer I've ever seen for an older film, by the way. All these years later, after watching 3 cuts of the film, I can finally say that I love Blade Runner. It's a flawed masterpiece, without a doubt. A film that contains imperfections, as all do, but one that's virtually impossible to stop thinking about. Every great hard sci-fi film since 1982 has the influence of Blade Runner all over it. Ghost in the Shell, Dark City, The Matrix, Strange Days, Gattaca. It's a film that asks you to soak in so much visual beauty, yet also pay attention to every word of dialogue. One viewing really isn't enough. In my case, it was 4 viewings. One of the best compliments that a film can get is that its world feels real. In the case of Blade Runner, the misty, filthy streets of 2019 Los Angeles appear so authentic, it feels like you could reach into the screen and become a part of it. Few movies, especially futuristic or sci-fi films, have so perfectly crafted a world as tangible as Blade Runner. The internal mysteries surrounding Deckard and the famous is he or isn't he question regarding his humanity has fueled film debates for decades. Do I think he's a replicant? Yeah, I kind of do. There's enough hints to suggest it. His eyes changing color like all the replicants' eyes do. Gaff leaving him the unicorn origami, which was a vision that Deckard had and
But it's
told
never
no one
verified.
about, possibly hinting at implanted memories like the other replicants. There's so much to glean from this movie while also appreciating it on a surface level. It's taken 4 viewings and over a decade for me to finally love it, but I can confidently say that I do. The only real issue I have with the film is the forced romance between Deckard and Rachel, but it's the type of flaw that one can overlook when everything else is such an explosion of sensory and auditory overload. I feel that Blade Runner is a flawed masterpiece. If it was perfect from the get-go, Ridley Scott wouldn't be so tempted to change and alter things. Nevertheless, due to its cultural impact and significance, I'm giving Blade Runner an A+. I can honestly say I never thought I would say those words because I've spent the large majority of my life finding this film rather polarizing. But for whatever reason, watching it again recently and really paying attention to everything about it, I just began to really appreciate this film. I love it, and if you've never checked it out, I definitely suggest watching the final cut. It's the best cut out of all the ones I've seen. Guys, look forward to my review of Blade Runner 2049. And as always, if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.
Good simple closing music.
Yeah.
And like I said, you don't see him here, but Chris Stuckmann, he's got a very easy to listen to voice.
Yes.
He's very relaxing and he knows what he's talking about, and he has that way where he can be soft spoken, not get too emotive or intense, while still being very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And he does a good summarization, analyzation of Blade Runner without really going into the plot and giving too much away.
Yeah, I would agree.
How does Blade Runner sound from the way you described it?
It sounds like I want to watch it with a very fine-tooth comb. And not when I'm just kind of half watching it.
Oh, that's the worst way to watch something. How does it look, the clips you saw of the film, just the visual?
Oh, it's a beautiful art.
It's almost impossible to watch any sci-fi film today that has like a high-tech future city without immediately going to Blade Runner.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause chances are that's where the filmmakers are getting it from.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the costumes and just the detail and everything like that was pretty exquisite.
And I've seen all 3 of the main versions. I own all 3 on this very now, I don't think in stock anymore, DVD set.
Mm-hmm.
And my thought is, the theatrical cut, I just think it's not bad, it's pretty good. The narration is definitely the worst part. Because Harrison Ford, it almost feels like, next to what Stuckmann said, it's trying to give that noir detective story feel. But Harrison Ford, it's clear, he didn't want to do it, and he didn't put really any effort into how he said his lines.
Mm-hmm.
He just goes, "That's me, Deckard, a Blade Runner." Just flat, no emotion. However, there is one line of narration in the theatrical cut that I do think is not that bad and kind of fits the gritty noir feel. It's when he's talking with his captain who calls with, he's joking but also showing his disgust for replicants, calls them skin jobs, to which Deckard says, he's the kind of cop who, back in the old days, would call black men niggers. Pretty, Some people cringe at that line, but it fits that type of old style, and he's making a point.
Yeah. That we can all relate to.
Yeah, and that's another big thing, Deckard's internal struggle with killing replicants, and also just how human are they, just how far you can see them as human, and can they evolve, and the replicants, just how far they are coming along as far as emotion, because I won't get into it, but a main plot point is rogue replicants fighting for their humanity and their survival. He didn't talk much about Rutger Hauer, who plays the main villain, and maybe that's to avoid getting into spoilers, but I'll just say Rutger Hauer was fantastic as this film's main villain. He was brutal, gave no mercy, but at the end, he was very sympathetic. The sequel, Blade Runner 2049, have you seen that?
I have not.
It was amazing. Like the first film, it did not do well, but it felt like I was watching a classic before it becomes a classic. And that film was also really great. It had two incredible villains. I repeat, they're both incredible, but neither one is on the same level as Rutger Hauer as Roy Batty. Just Blade Runner, it's a great film, but as the Honest Trailers put it, if it was so perfect, they wouldn't have recut it a million times. The final cut is the one that most people like. Me personally, I like the director's cut, mostly just because the final cut has a few CGI touch-ups, and even though I get reworking an older movie, I'm a little mixed on putting CGI in an older film, because we saw that work with the Star Wars movies. And there's one very specific but intense line of dialogue that they change for the final cut that I liked better in the director's cut. But both versions work in their own way. You'll know when you see it. And goes to say, Chris Stuckmann did a great job summarizing Blade Runner, giving his thoughts, and it's interesting to hear how it took 4 viewings before he finally loved it. I've had movies that I thought...
That's a lot of death.
Yeah, totally. I've had movies that I loved before, but now I don't like the original Friday the 13th. But I can't think of a movie exactly... Well, when I tried watching Godfather Part 2, I didn't make it past 20 minutes, but I was young. Watching older, I loved it, but other than that, I can't really think of a movie that I didn't like, but then really loved later on.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe that will happen with me at Christmas Story.
You'll find out in a few weeks just what Christine thinks of A Christmas Story. Anyway, happy November, for lack of a better term. Hope everybody has a good Thanksgiving, and here's to 2020.
Woohoo!
Maybe we'll finally get those flying cars.
You can't even get a self-driving car.